Hello and welcome to Rough Cut Film Review. I've got a review of the 2011 Australian film Snowtown. It's known as the Snowtown Murders in the US, actually that made me think of John Carter, because John Carter, they were going to call it John Carter of Mars. If you see the closing credits of that, there is a John Carter of Mars logo because of a focus group dispute. I'm pleased to say that Snowtown will have been absolutely nowhere near a focus group, because if a focus group had seen this, they never would have got it out the door. This is based on true events, and I've looked into this to some extent, and this isn't like those horror films when they say based on true events, and the true event turns out to be there was once a man who owned a Bible, and then in the film the man owns a Bible and there's a demon or something. This really is based on true, there's a true story there. It does make me nervous when I see that, but this, passes the test. So, came out last year. I didn't see it. I meant to. Didn't see it. It was recommended to me recently by a friend, it sounded great. So here we go. So Snowtown, it's a sort of indie, lo-fi, nasty film. And that in itself really sells me, to be honest with you. When I think of Aussie films, sure, obviously there's Gallipoli in Australia. Gallipoli's great, Australia's poor, but my favourites are the really cheap and dirty and nasty films made on a shoestring budget. So when I think of them, I think of Mad Max, but actually more specifically I think of Russell Crowe's breakthrough film Romper Stomper. Interesting little fact about that. Romper Stomper, the main guy, Davey, as he's called in the film, in real life, the actor who was unknown. He was a heroin addict, and before the film was actually released, apparently he left a little note saying, "I fucking hate heroin," and jumped in front of a train. Apparently that then triggered a song by Russell Crowe. So, tragedy compounded on tragedy, really, but there we go. So, Snowtown, back to Snowtown. So again, it's low budget. It's really low budget, but it's fantastically acted. This, instead of, poor Melbourne, which we see in Romper Stomper, this is poor and deprived areas of Adelaide. It's called Salisbury or something, which sounds very nice, but it's not. It's a sort of place where, kids play with shopping trolleys in the street, and, no one cares or stops them, and people are loud and extremely antisocial. At all hours, people just sort of smoke a lot and gamble, on those sort of fruit machines. They watch television, drink, and yet, somehow these people don't seem very happy with their lives, which, quite frankly, is baffling. Having said that, actually, that stupid little joke of mine ruins this little setup, because what's really nice about this film is throughout it is very oppressive, but the sort of community, this poor community, and it's very understated, they have these little laughs throughout the film. So, there'll be a kid playing on a motorbike, those stupid little kids with one of those little scootery things tearing up and down like a sort of little motorbike. People will find, ways to amuse themselves, and it's a really nice little touch in a very black film. So I think the main thing to say really is it's tough, and when we think of Hollywood tough, I think of things like The Wire, and people say, God, that's so tough. I don't think that's really that tough. This is grim, this is really, and it's authentic as well, which is absolutely crucial. It's very dark, it's very sort of, very grungy, very grimy. In terms of tone, Snowtown is absolutely as black as it gets, really. It's, it's poor people and bad stuff happening, and aside from these little laughs that people find, the humour throughout the day that people naturally find anywhere around the world, this film is dark. In terms of structure and how the film's put together, it's actually pretty conventional. So plot and structure is fairly conventional, and the way it's been made, it's sort of the way it was put together really that makes it a little bit special. So direction wise, it's done by a chap called Justin Kurzel, who I'm not familiar with at all, but his style is very natural. He takes a very sort of fly on the wall approach. Don't think anything like the Blair Witch Project. This is just sort of a natural, people having real conversations. You really get a sense. So it reminds me a lot of Shane Meadows, that you believe these are real people, real characters, and they're just going about a normal day. You absolutely believe that. The cinematography is done by a chap called Adam Arapor. Again, I'm not familiar with him at all, but a quick check on IMDb tells me that he's done a lot of work with shorts and with documentaries, and you can absolutely see all that experience up on the screen, and both of them do a fantastic job throughout the film. Sound-wise, I almost got the feeling, and I'm sure this isn't actually true, but I got the sense that it wasn't overdubbed. So when people make a film, they'll record all the sound as they're making the film, and then afterwards, in the editing stage, they'll then re-record their lines and then dub it over. I got the sense here that it wasn't overdubbed because everything just seemed so natural, and I'm sure that was just, my misunderstanding of it. But I'm just trying to say it was everything was just so nicely done and very believable and relatable. So the main characters, so we start off with something of a non-conventional family. We've got stepbrothers and that kind of thing. It's Jeremy Kyle style family. Early on we get this wonderful little scene of the family sitting around the dinner table. They're having dinner. They start talking about crime, and it's sort of, it's when people in a pub the round over, when they're comfortable around the world over, and they start saying, the problem with this country is, they have sort of one of those conversations really, and they start saying how there's this guy lady who's a qualified teacher, but because she nicked something when she was 18 she can't get a job, how awful. They start to talk, and it sort of ramps up and the tension builds a little bit throughout the conversation. So they start talking about affirmative action and how they can make a difference, and the whole thing takes a really dark turn. But we get the whole way through, we get the sense that this is a believable family. They start talking about bloody pedos, and nonces and all that kind of stuff, but it's all very believable and really, really well done. At that stage I really wanted to go, and I wanted them all to be okay. I wanted to go and have dinner with them, and I wanted to bring some chips round and some beers, and make sure the little ones were in bed, all this sort of thing. But the film gets very dark very quickly. I keep using the word dark, and I think I'm not using it enough. So acting is universally very strong, as I've alluded to. The central roles are unbelievable, and particularly in the tough scenes, we get close-up shots of their facial expressions, and it's remarkable acting. How the actors manage that in such an awful scene, I don't know. And it's because I don't recognise any of these actors, I think it's always more believable in a way than if this was sort of Kevin Spacey and Bruce Willis doing all this stuff, you wouldn't really be come on, that's Kevin Spacey. Whereas these people are very good actors. I don't know, and boy do I believe them. It's a slow burner. We get a film for the family's life, then suddenly the kid is the 16-year-old is asleep with the cricket on, and then some bad stuff happens, and all of a sudden, wow, it just absolutely hits you like a train. It's incredibly dark. So when you think of tough films, Hollywood films, if you take for example American History X as a barometer, people find that difficult. Really be careful with watching Snowtown, because this is a lot worse. There's basically two key scenes which are horrific, and I don't just mean in a sort of torture porn kind of Eli Roth horrible sort of way. It's really difficult going, because you really empathize with the characters. It's believable, so it's really difficult. And please don't make the comparison in your mind, but I saw both Human Centipede films, and I thought they were just trash, and watching them through, didn't care about the characters, didn't find the premise interesting, so it was just sort of like walking through a series of it was walking through sort of a what do they call them? Like a ghost house. Where there were scares and shocks and disgusting things happen, but I didn't have any emotional connection. And to be perfectly honest with Snowtown, I was watching it through. Really made me think of the victims and the killers. The people responsible for doing this. I was thinking, what triggered the killings? Thinking all around this, was it is it caused by misunderstanding? Is it caused by poverty? Are people a product of their environment? And I'm absolutely not going to draw a line down there. It's, if you see Snowtown, just obviously draw your own conclusions. It's actually made me think I really need to rewatch Kill List as well, because I was really, really looking forward to Kill List, and I didn't enjoy it, and I was expecting to. So I'm going to give that another crack, and the video is now getting too long for... Okay, so we're now going to part 2.